The Redevelopment Agency meeting of November 18, 2015 is called to order. This meeting's been properly noticed and posted in compliance with the open meeting law. These proceedings are being recorded as well as presented live on KCLV, Cable Channel 2, and are closed captioned for hearing impaired viewers. Please note, some customers of Cox Communication who do not have a cable box may view this meeting on digital channel 89.5. The Redevelopment Agency meeting, as well as all other KCLV programming, may be viewed on the city's website at www.kclv.tv. The proceedings will be rebroadcast on KCLV, Channel 2, and the web the Wednesday of the meeting at 8 p.m., also on Friday at 4 a.m., Saturday at 7 p.m., Sunday at 7 a.m., and the following Monday at 1 p.m. This building is protected by state-of-the-art fire detection and suppression sprinkler systems. If alarms should activate during today's meeting, please evacuate using the exits at the rear of these chambers out to the mezzanine, proceed out the double doors to the terrace, down the back staircase. For anyone who has difficulty with stairs, please check with a marshal or fire official for assistance. Once outside, assemble on the northeast corner across the street from City Hall at Lewis and First. Employees wearing safety vests or city marshals will inform you when it's safe to re-enter the building. For public comment related to items on the agenda, citizen participation, and public hearing items, we have available speaker cards, which you may complete and submit to the city clerk up front here. Cards are available online in the clerk's office or at the rear of these chambers. If you do not submit a card, it does not prevent you from speaking under public comment, citizen participation, or specified public hearing items. If anyone's present today who has need for hearing impaired equipment, please come see our city clerk up front. If you parked in the parking garage across the street, please be sure to have your ticket validated by security officers when exiting. We'll move on to agenda item 3. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda and for action. The amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. All comments made will be cross-referenced to those specific items. If anyone submitted a speaker card who wishes to speak under this portion of the agenda, please come to the podium, state your name for the record. We'll set the time at 1 minute. And I do have cards from Ken Liu and from Virginia Valentine. And so good morning, and please come forward, state your name. We do not need an address. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning again.
Good morning, Mayor. My name is Ken Liu. I'm here to represent the Culinary Workers Union and our 55,000 members, many of whom live and work in the city of Las Vegas. I'm here today to ask you to deny the TIF application by the Lucky Dragon Hotel and Casino. It is unfair for a casino developer to get tax breaks while we have so many needs in our schools, libraries, police, and fire, and other public services in the city. Our position is very simple. If you cannot make it in the gaming industry without public subsidies, you have no business being in the gaming industry. And the case of Lucky Dragon before you today is even more troubling. The company is asking you to help them out when they have not been able to raise enough money from outside investors on their own. As you know, they were supposed to be funded primarily by EB-5 investors who can get a path to U.S. citizenship through direct investment in the U.S. The project was approved in 2012, and its EB-5 fundraising target was $150 million. And here we are, 3 years later. The company has raised only $60 million from EB-5 investors. If they cannot convince enough investors to invest, even with the promise of eventual U.S. citizenship, we should all ask why that is the case. Las Vegas gaming companies have built many amazing resorts and created hundreds of thousands of jobs over the years. They have not needed any public support, and those that have failed on their own. If you remember, less than a year ago, tax breaks for the proposed downtown stadium very quickly proved to be a very unpopular idea. I urge you not to make the same mistake again today by giving away our tax dollars to the Lucky Dragon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming down. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Virginia Valentine, and I'm here today representing the Nevada Resort Association, which, as you know, the members are the large resort hotels throughout the state, almost 70 of them across the state. Coming off of the Great Recession, many of my members worked very hard to survive on their own through these terrible times, and to use redevelopment agency money like this for the Lucky Dragon project is probably one of the worst uses of redevelopment agency funds I can think of. And I don't recall if it was 2001 or 1999. I represented the city of Las Vegas at the legislature, and I will tell you, this is the kind of project that when the legislature considers extending the life of your agency, they will point to say, this is why we shouldn't extend the life of your agency. So again, we think this is a terrible use of redevelopment agency money, and we hope that you will direct the staff not to pursue redevelopment agency money for the Lucky Dragon project. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. How many years as city manager?
Only 4. I'll
nice
leave it
to
at that.
see you.
They were
Thank you for
wonderful years.
You're so cute. Thank you. Anyone else wanting to comment, please come forward. Thank you. We will close the public comments, and we'll move on to agenda item 4. For possible action to approve the final minutes by reference to the regular redevelopment agency meeting of October 7th, 2015. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes, Mayor.
There's a motion to approve the minutes. Please vote and please post. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, report by the redevelopment agency staff and discussion for possible action regarding a tax increment financing request from Lucky Dragon Hotel Casino located at Sahara west of Fairfield Avenue, Ward 3. Councilman Coffin, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Goodman, Madam Chairman of the Redevelopment Agency Board, and agency board members. For the record, Bill Arndt, Director, Economic and Urban Development. This item is part of a request to look at a redevelopment agency assistance for a project that's under development by the name of the Lucky Dragon Hotel Casino. In introducing the item, I want to make mention of the backup. Oftentimes, we get requests for assistance, and we need to have an understanding of what the project is, and we use a project information checklist, which is really an outline of a business plan to get, as staff, our arms around what a project is, who the principals are, what the funding sources are for the project. And so your backup is listed Lucky Dragon Hotel and Casino TIP application, and it is entitled that, but this is actually part of a form that we use as staff to really understand a project and hear directly from the principals of the project and the project sponsor what the project is, what it entails. So that is your backup. The project is off of Sahara Avenue and is under development. And with us today is Andrew Fampa, one of the principals. I understand he has other representatives of his project team as well. But we wanted to bring this to the agency board because we haven't received a request in some time for support of a hotel casino project with direct financing. We have supported the industry in the past. We do support the industry as a region and as a state. We have the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. We have a lot of different resources in the community that support the industry, but we haven't had a request directly from a single project sponsor in some time. And it's my understanding that the redevelopment agency has not directly participated in a hotel casino project in over 20 years. So because this is an important policy discussion, we wanted to have you as our board of directors weigh in on this. And so with that, I'd like to ask the project sponsor to take the dais. And I believe Senator Bryan is here representing the project sponsor as well.
Good morning.
Before anybody speaks, Mayor, may I have a word here? I just thank you very much, Bill, for your forthright explanation of why we're here today. I think it's very important to understand that this is a policy discussion to be started today. That is, if there's an affirmative vote, not an action to spend or allocate a dime's worth of taxpayer money. And so it's worthy of discussion, it's worthy of serious study, I think, because our practice excludes other unnamed businesses as well. That is, there's a laundry list of a long laundry list of businesses that do not typically or in practice receive any money. So it's nice to have had your forthright explanation, and I hope that explanation, that people who are discerning listeners would understand that it directly contradicts some of the previous statements that were made in the public comment period. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. Let me preface my comments by thanking each of you and your staff for working with us over the past few weeks as we discussed this project. For the record, my name is Richard Bryan, and I appear here on behalf of the Lucky Dragon. To my left is Andy Fonfa, one of the principals, who I think is well known to you, Mr. Bill Widener, and Dave Jacoby, and James, excuse me, James, pardon me. Let me first of all clarify what I think may be a misconception. Our appearance here today is not to request TIF funding. We want, if the council approves, to direct the staff to work with us so that we can come back with a specific proposal for you to consider. I believe most of you are familiar with Mr. Fonfa. He's been involved in development since 1981 when he founded his real estate company. As you know, because many of you are personally involved, he was responsible with the support of the city and TIF, the Allure project there on West Sahara, which is immediately adjacent to the Lucky Dragon Casino. Mr. Widener has been a longtime member of our community. He was the president of the Las Vegas Sands. He played an instrumental role in guiding the 4,000-room Venetian, the 3,000-room Palazzo, and frankly was on the cutting edge of the decision to try to go to Macau. So he's a long time. And Mr. Jacoby, who is our COO, is the individual who is our day-to-day project supervisor. The project is $139 million. And the question is, well, why aren't you all financing this, and why are you here asking the city to explore that? Things change. I mean, the world changed just this last Sunday when the terrible bombing incident occurred in Paris. So circumstances change. The original concept was that Mr. Fonfa, Mr. Widener, and others were going to put up, and they did put up approximately $24 million of their own. The EB-5 project, which I think is familiar, federal legislation that encourages those that invest to get a green card, which allows permanent residence in the United States. Well, $60 million has been generated as a result of that. But things in China changed. I think none of you are unmindful of the fact that the Chinese economy is slowing dramatically. Although it's growing faster perhaps than ours, from a Chinese point of view, it's a recession. And none of us are unmindful of the fact, although we hope for the very best, that the SLS has been struggling. As a consequence, the amount of money that we hope to raise with EV funding has essentially dried up. So we've got a gap. Mr. Fonfa and his colleagues have a commitment for, I believe it's $35 million, $30 million from First Foundation, and so there's a gap. There's about a $25 million gap. Now the project is topped off, but obviously without the additional financing, we're not going to be able to complete the project as we had planned. Now let me talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. I'm not unmindful of the fact that many of our friends in the room, who I've known since the memory of man runs not to the contrary, are here and they oppose this. And let me talk for a moment about the policy question, because I think that's what you all need to decide. It has been said that we have never provided TIF funding for a gaming project. That may be true historically, but that begs the question, is it appropriate to reconsider our policy? Gaming is our largest industry. I suspect that in Detroit, if the auto industry has a problem, nobody would suggest that they're persona non grata because they're the largest industry. My point being is that I respectfully suggest that it's time to appropriately reconsider. You all are the policymakers for the city to determine whether that's appropriate. It's also suggested, and I'm not unmindful of this, that somehow that this is a preferential project that only would apply to Mr. Fonfa and his colleagues if you approve that. Let me, if I may, respectfully disabuse you of this. What we are suggesting as part of the discussion with the staff, if you vote to direct your staff to work with us, is to suggest that there ought to be something, a framework, not just for Mr. Fonfa and the Lucky Dragon, but a policy issue that would apply to anyone who applied. And let me suggest that there are some criteria that make some sense. I don't think anyone would quarrel with the fact that the location of the Lucky Dragon is in a depressed area. I lived there 53 years ago. I can testify firsthand, and I know Councilman Stavros Anthony has, I think he was a beat cop there 30 years ago. We all know what that issue is. So this is not a development proposed on the Las Vegas Strip. It's not a development in the downtown and with all the revitalization that this council has played a key role in. This, as the lawyers would say, is sui generis. This is unique. We've got, okay, a horrendously depressed area that has been, unfortunately, a haven for crime, drug peddling, all the kinds of things that none of us want to occur. So let me suggest that if there is a policy consideration, let's suggest, look, prospectively, any other applicant that comes forward with a project, is it in a depressed area? Secondly, what kind of an investment are we talking about? We're talking about $139 million. This is not remodeling and updating suites and fine-tuning the... This is new construction. And the third criteria ought to be, is it adding anything to the tax roll? And respectfully, it's adding a lot to the tax roll. And finally, to make the distinction, well, let me just also, because our friends in the Culinary Union were here, we're talking about directly or indirectly 3,600 jobs. So you've got a horrendously depressed area. You've got a capital investment of, we're talking of successful, of $139 million, a additional addition to the tax roll, and providing 3,600 additional jobs. Respectfully, I would suggest, if you choose to reconsider that policy, that's a reasonable criteria. And any applicant, if you choose to adopt that criteria, who would apply as a gamer, I can tell you my clients would be here in the audience saying they deserve it. So this is not something that we ask. This only applies to Mr. Fonfa. And finally, I think there is a bit of confusion. There's been some reference to the stadium, and I certainly don't want to go into that this morning. You've had plenty of discussion. But the way this works, and I think each of you know, we are providing additional value. We're not taking any money from the city. We're adding additional value, and that additional value, which is the tax income district, we are asking for that to provide that funding gap that we need of about $25 million. Now, that's as I understand the project, and I would certainly hope that you would at least give us a chance to discuss this in more detail with your staff, submit a specific proposal, which you can reject up or down. And that's all we're asking, an interim opportunity to come up with a specific proposal and ask respectfully for you all to reconsider. Just because the policy in the past has not been to fund a gaming operation, does that mean it should continue? Are there circumstances, and I'm not going to repeat myself, but I would respectfully suggest that there are circumstances, and the criteria that I've outlined, again, for your consideration. Now, Mr. Fonfa probably has been more involved than any of his partners in this, and with your permission, I'd like to ask Mr. Fonfa to address the council, and then we're happy to respond, Mayor and members of the council, to any questions you have. Mr. Fonfa?
Thank you, Senator. Please, Mr.
Just state your name for the record.
Andrew Fonfa. Thank you all for listening to us today. I want to talk a little bit about TIF and the possible misconceptions that are out there about TIF and what the public believes. You know, TIF financing, for example, the city coffers are right here. All of the city money sits right here. We're not asking for any of the city money that the city has on hand right now. We don't want any public money. We don't want public money that the city has geared for all different types of ventures that they want to do. That's what sits right here, the city coffers. There's a misconception that we're trying to raid the city coffers, that we're trying to raid public money and take public money away from the city of Las Vegas. That's not the case. Here's all the city money sitting right here. We intend to finish this development, and it ultimately is a $400 million development, Phase 1, Phase 2. The Allure Tower was part of Phase 1. Lucky Dragon Hotel Casino will be Phase 2. We are creating a new tax revenue base. We are bringing money to the city that they don't have today. You have a parcel of land that brings no money into the city. Once we finish this development, we will bring tax revenue, additional money to the city, not touching the city coffers, not raiding the city coffers. We will bring additional tax revenue to the city, and we're merely asking to participate in those increases that we're going to deliver to the city with new tax revenue, new money, not old money that sits here that the city has geared for other things, parks or whatever they want to do with those monies. That's in the city coffers. We're not raiding the city coffers. We're creating new tax money that we are asking to participate in those increases. What I can tell you is that the Lucky Dragon checks all the boxes. The very reason why the redevelopment agency was formed and why we have it is to be able to give incentives to developers in these challenging areas that they wouldn't normally go into and develop. We're going to try to do that. And we check every box. We're creating 3,600 jobs, 3,600 people that will now be spending money in the city, creating more money for the city, 3,600 jobs. We're getting rid of 4 decades of blight and crime that's been in Naked City. All of us know about Naked City. As Senator Bryan said, Councilman Starvos Anthony was a beat cop 30 years ago. He remembers the same thing, the same dangerous area that existed 30 years ago. It's still a dangerous area today, 30 years later. It hasn't changed. The city on its own has an opportunity to work with us and try to get rid of this blight and crime-ridden areas. Developers who are going to invest their own funds and lots of money into these areas, in these challenging areas, need assistance from the city. They need incentives. And as Senator Bryan said, anybody that's going to create a new tax base, a new revenue base for the city, create jobs, go into a blighted area and get rid of crime that's been there for 30 or 40 or 50 years, we would be advocates of them to receive incentives from the city. And that's the very reason why we started the redevelopment agency, to do these kind of projects. So again, we touch every base. We check every box. This is a great project, and we intend to finish this project and create that new revenue. We don't want any money from the city. We want to create that new revenue so that we can participate in those increases to allow us to receive that TIF and finish this project. Yes, as Senator Bryan has said, it's a difficult situation in China right now. It's very difficult to get money out of China. I heard someone from the union talk about EB5. EB5 is on a renewal right now. The Chinese are looking at this and they're saying, we want to know the new rules and regulations before we commit any more funds to projects like this. And believe me, social media in China, in 15 minutes, they know exactly what's happening in Las Vegas. They know all about the SLS. They know the SLS lost $85 million in the first 6 months. They're very aware of that. We are going to get to the finish line on this project. We're going to create this new revenue. We're going to get rid of this blight and this crime that's existed for 40 or 50 years in this area, and we're going to continue to develop in this area. We want to create a whole new Chinatown in this area and come back to you and probably ask for more TIF financing to continue to get rid of the blight and the crime that's been in this area for so long. Please give us an opportunity. Today's vote, I know, is not an up or down vote on whether you should give us the money or not. It's a vote to see if we can continue to discuss this and talk about mutual ways that we can get to the finish line on this thing, and that's what we want. We want that vote today. Councilwoman Tarkanian, this used to be her area. She was extremely instrumental in us getting the Allure high-rise completed in the worst recession in the history of the world. I had 427 units there. I sold every single unit myself and took lesser prices on those units to get them all sold. Councilman Tarkanian was very instrumental in that happening, so we appreciate that. Councilman Coffin now, this is his district, and he has been a great believer in our project, and we want to be a success. Please vote for us in favor today to at least continue the discussion so that we can all see how far we can get, and if we can mutually agree to get this project finished, get rid of this crime, get rid of this blight. That's what this RDA was all about. That's why we formed this all those years ago in 1986, and I was here for that. and we've created so many good projects. We want to continue to do that. But we're not stealing money from the city coffers. We're creating a new tax revenue base that's completely different than what's over here. Thank you very much.
We're here
Thank
to
you, Mr.
respond to any
Raffan.
questions, Mayor, that you and the members of the council might have.
Any other part of the presentation? Good morning, Mr. Widener, too, and gentlemen.
Excuse me, before you start, Councilman Barlow, you are on the line, correct?
Thank you. Councilman Barlow was delayed from Ward 5 and I guess is still on his way. So thank you. Good morning, Councilman. Okay, so let's entertain questions, but I'd like to start off with my own first. As I was understanding it, you are having people over in China at this time looking at possibilities for support of EB5. And there was a thought in your conversation that this would be sometime in mid-December before you would know about that. Is that still a fact, or is that no longer consideration?
Well, the USCIS has a renewal extension that lasts till December 11th. At that time, they're supposed to tell us what these new rules and regulations are. I would suspect Congress and the Senate probably are going to be taking their time on this issue. They may not render a decision by December 11th, which means it's going to be delayed again. They may give a short extension, but again, the Chinese are they're so leery and uncertain of what the future of the program is that they're not willing to put their money right now into any of these ventures until they know exactly what the new rules and regulations are. We don't know when that's going to take place. Maybe Senator O'Brien could address something like that, but we know that Congress will take their time.
And failing in this request, should that be the condition, what would happen at that point, please?
Well, if we cannot get any more EB5 money, potentially we'll have to either slow down or halt construction and continue to look for a source of funding. Obviously, if we can continue discussions with the city and city manager and the council to determine if there's a mutually way that we can get this thing finished, that's the best scenario for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Comments, questions from council? Before I turn it over, Councilwoman, I see.
Excuse me, I have laryngitis. What is the gap of money needed? I have heard anywhere from 50 million to 25 million, and I'm wondering what the gap is.
Right now, as Senator Bryan has told you, Mr. Widener and myself have put $24 million into the project. We've raised a little over $60 million in EB5 money. First Foundation Bank has said they would go ahead and lend us $30 million if we reached $85 million of funding. So there's a $25 million gap approximately right now. And we're pushing as hard as we can with First Foundation Bank. Obviously, we want to sit down with City Council and try to see if there's a mutual way we can all get to the finish line.
But we don't, the money you would get from this would not be 25 million, probably.
Well, you know, we don't actually get the money, Councilwoman. As I said, we're not raiding the city coffers. We have to create this new revenue. But yes, if we could receive a portion of the TIF, we think we can go back to the bank and be successful in negotiating to finish the project and move forward.
Could I ask Mr. Arndt, please, about what would you expect from the TIF in that area that they might get back and be able to go to the bank?
Thank you, Councilwoman. Again, for the record, Bill Arndt. We've looked at projections based on the stated project value as it was stated in the information we received, and we believe that based on past practices of applying the tax rates from the redevelopment agency, that if we did a 50-50 split of available new taxes from the project where 50 went back to the developer, the agency retained 50, that over annually that would be roughly $500,000, so over $20 million, annually would be, over a 20-year period it would be roughly $5 million, so annually about $250,000, the annual tax liability being about $500,000. Again, that's a preliminary projection. We haven't had detailed discussions with the developer. It was just based on the project information received.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask you gentlemen, if you would, for a few moments. This is probably something different, but your request is different. If you wouldn't mind having a seat right there where we have reserved seats. And I'm going to open this up and see if there's anyone that would like to make further comment
Thank you very much, Mayor, for the opportunity to address you and
And
the
we will
council.
bring you right back up. But I think, you know, this is so important to all of us. We're a family here. We are working in redevelopment for so long now and doing exactly what you are speaking to and trying to create jobs, most importantly. But you are in a depressed area. But we're talking about, for the first time ever, to my knowledge and the research I've done, extending some type of service to help fund private industry in the casino business. And we have not done that yet in any of the, who knows, a closed tower reopening. You have to correct me, Betsy, because you've been in this longer, but this would be a first.
Brad may want to weigh in here because he's been here longer than me, but my understanding is we've never had a tax increment financing agreement for a hotel casino project.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Jerbick?
That's correct.
And you've
The
been here how
Stratosphere-
many years?
23.
Okay.
The Stratosphere project, which is the only hotel casino project that I'm aware of that we participated. Well, we did Main Street Station as well, but neither one involved tax increment financing. What we did is we lended our condemnation authority to the Stratosphere, and I don't know what we did with respect to the Main Street Station, but there was no TIF involved in either one.
Okay, so I really, and thank you for coming back up, Ms. Valentine, and anybody else really from the casino industry that's here that would like to speak to this issue, because we are in this city one family of people. And is the time now, or is it never? We need as much information as we can have so we can have a clear decision. Thank you, Ms. Valentine.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to comment on that. Again, for the record, my name is Virginia Valentine with the Nevada Resort Association. During my tenure as your city manager, I was involved in negotiation of several redevelopment projects. One of those was the World Furniture Market. Another was the Outlet Mall. We, along with the happiest mayor in the world, also negotiated an agreement for the 61 acres. And we looked, Mayor Goodman and I, at several other models for redevelopment agencies. We spent some time in San Diego. We looked at what other places were doing. One of the basic incentives or reasons that you create a redevelopment agency is so that you encourage development that increases all of the assessed value. And when you increase all of the assessed value, you benefit all of the taxpayers and all of those entities that get a slice of the overlapping rate in your taxes, the school district, metro, the county, the city, all those little pieces of the overlapping rate. If you, in fact, were to give every hotel casino, and I'm very interested in Senator Bryan's comment about having a policy, if you had a policy that hotel casinos were eligible for tax increment, financing rebates, whatever you want to call it, at some point, if you are returning all of the increment to the development itself, you have completely defeated the purpose of creating a redevelopment agency. So I would suggest to you that if you want to have a policy discussion, we would welcome the opportunity to participate. But right now, the people I represent have made an investment. It's a level playing field as long as everyone is playing by the same rules. They're going and obtaining their own financing. But we would be happy to be involved in that conversation. And I do appreciate, again, the opportunity to state our position.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Russell Rowe here on behalf of Boyd Gaming Corporation. And Mayor, we do appreciate the opportunity to come up and speak and providing additional time. And this is an important topic, and we agree as well. This is a very serious policy discussion. If you're going to consider it, you need to think about it. There's a pretty long history in Nevada of public assistance dollars to businesses not going to the gaming industry, and there's a lot of reasons for that. At the state level, you cannot get economic development incentives for a hotel resort project. That's been a long-standing policy, and I think it's something that's been certainly contemplated in the legislation continuing the redevelopment authority at the legislature. I know it's not necessarily been spoken about, but just being involved in those conversations over many sessions, it's always been contemplated that gaming is not the target of redevelopment dollars. And I think gaming, as you can see today, doesn't want to be using redevelopment dollars. Gaming is actually the one usually providing the funds for redevelopment dollars. So it is a serious policy discussion. I think the other thing you need to consider is that these monies that would be used by Lucky Dragon would otherwise go into the RDA, and you have some very significant redevelopment projects that you're working on. We're involved as a company, as are many other stakeholders in the downtown area, working with you on your downtown, the update of your downtown centennial plan, the medical district, and all the opportunities that you have there, the need for residential, mid-rise residential, and the struggles in making those pencil out, basic businesses in economically depressed areas. That's, in our opinion, where the redevelopment dollars ought to be focused. Even transportation infrastructure in the downtown area, in the corridor, which you guys have been working on very diligently, all of these things are rise to the level of redevelopment, not hotel resorts, particularly those right off the Strip. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before you leave, Mr. Rowe, a question from Councilman Coffin.
Thanks, Russ. I have a question. I think I heard you say that these redevelopment dollars could be used for something else. The proposed redevelopment dollars that theoretically could be put into a hotel casino would be better spent somewhere else. Or I think to the extent that it perpetuates an error that someone has made and it seems to circulate. These redevelopment dollars that would be created by a TIF do not come from anybody else. They would not be spent elsewhere, because if there is no TIF created, there is no additional redevelopment dollars. Isn't it kind of a circular problem here?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilman. I don't think so. As I understand, I'm not a redevelopment expert. I'd defer to Mr. Arndt, but as I understand it, the way these TIF dollars work, they're asking for the increment, right? That's of public tax revenues that are thrown off of the project as a result of the project. If you don't return those dollars to the project, those would be retained by the RDA, and I would ask Mr. Arndt to confirm that.
Mr. Arndt, could you come up, please?
The RDA could then use those for other redevelopment projects.
Is that in fact, Mr. Arndt, if you would respond to Mr. Rowe's comment there, is that fact?
Thank you again. For the record, Bill Arndt. The way tax increment revenue works is new taxes from a property, whether through appreciation in the value of the property, but most often through new construction, new development. If we have new development, those taxes above and beyond when the project started, above and beyond the base year, instead of going to all the jurisdictions throughout the state, the vast majority, about 75%, come into the redevelopment agency. So I think the councilman's question is an important one, and as it relates to this project is you first have to look at the project. Will it move forward with or without agency assistance? I defer to the project sponsor, but that's why we usually look at these types of requests at the outset before a project starts, because the presumption is that without our help, the project doesn't get built. If the project doesn't get built, Councilman's correct, we don't get new tax revenue. So there's a presumption there that the project will not move forward without agency assistance. I think Senator Bryan and Mr. Fonfa spoke to where they're at with the project. Once the revenue comes in, all the redevelopment agency revenue essentially goes into our agency account, and then we can use it for new investments in the area. We can use it for other projects. We can use it to acquire land, to invest in infrastructure. So if we did zero tax increment financing assistance for this project, and they were able to move forward without our help, then there would be new revenue. I think Mr. Rowe is correct. But as far as the ability of the project to move forward without our help, again, I'd defer to Senator Bryan and Mr. Fonfa. I think they explained in fairly good detail where they're at with the project.
And also, unless I misunderstood Mr. Rowe, legislative decisions regarding redevelopment funding preclude that type of funding for gaming? Is that what you said?
Thank you, Mayor. Russell Rowe, for the record. At the state level, state economic development centers are not permitted to be used for hotel resorts.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Beers, please.
Thank you. Mr. Arndt, I have a question, a technical question about when improvements to real property result in an increase in assessed value. So, for example, Echelon, for the last 3 years, has the value of that steel been incorporated into the assessed value of the property? Or is there a wait until you get a certificate of occupancy before the assessed value increases? Do you know?
I'll let Mr. Vincent, our CFO, weigh in, but Councilman, again, for the record, Bill Arndt, it's my understanding that if there's new improvements, even if it's during construction, there is a partial improvement value that's placed on the tax roll. I haven't looked particularly for that specific project, but that typically happens during course of construction. Whether or not it's happened with Echelon, I'm not really certain. Mr. Vincent?
For the record, Mark Vincent, Chief Financial Officer. Mr. Arndt's representation is accurate. I'm not sure exactly how those get valued since the project isn't complete, but there is some value in the improvements to date, and those will stay on the tax record, and taxes will be paid on those.
And so by corollary, one would think that the value of what's taken place at the Golden or the Lucky Dragon site thus far, perhaps not yet, but shortly, will likely result in an increase in the assessed value and some increment to the agency.
Councilman, I believe that's correct. Over time, it should. As you're aware, I think most people are aware, there's a lag between when it goes on the rolls as far as when the improvement's done and when the assessor goes out to appraise. But eventually, there should be a value assigned to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you. My name is Joe Woody. I'm with the El Cortez. I'm here on behalf of the Epstein family and our whole team at the El Cortez. Just wanted to state first that we just heard about this yesterday, so we read about it in John L. Smith's column, and so we're, first of all, disappointed in that. Secondly, you know, our opposition is based on our invested dollars. We have put all our money in the El Cortez. We have 364 rooms. We work very hard. When we do projects, we make sure our funding is in place before we move forward. We're very conservative. We've invested $40 million in our property over the last 10 years, and we've invested every cash flow dollars to do that. And we're not taking any money out. There's no dividends from the company for 10 years, and we don't see any in the future till we get the property up and running. So we're making a lot of sacrifices on our behalf, and we just don't feel it's right for the city to be getting involved in financing casinos. It's you know, if we get this, you know, Senator Bryan referenced the SLS and what happened there. Well, what happens when Lucky Dragon falls away of SLS, which we certainly hope that doesn't happen, but what's the next ask for in terms of dollars? Where does the working capital come from, and the other shortfalls that are very likely to exist in the opening years? So that's my point. We just speak our opposition to this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your comments. I want to ask staff, and having just read it in John L. Smith's column, did we drop a ball there, or is that part of protocol that there's nothing publicly stated for requests for funding of any sort? How come it wasn't common knowledge?
Well, we followed the open meeting law requirements, and we posted the backup material. So we had many days of what I would consider public notification. We did not, until there was some council direction to us, engage the gaming community in a discussion about whether or not tax increment financing should be made available to gaming properties. In fact, that's one of the things that we're hoping will be.
I don't want to misconstrue, or you to misconstrue what I was aiming for. Was this made a public notification, not the dialogue that may or may not continue at this point? I mean, obviously, but is there, because they were in the dark and other gamers were in the dark downtown, did we follow the procedure that this is something that would be on the agenda?
Yes. We followed the open meeting law criteria. We posted it with several days' notice and included the backup so that citizens could inform themselves whether they were part of the downtown gaming community or, quite frankly, anybody around the globe could inform themselves of the discussion that was planned to happen today.
At that point, I mean, it's coming in front of us today. Were it to continue, the dialogue would be the outreach from staff then to include gamers or not include, part of open meeting discussion? What would be the process?
If council didn't direct us to go forward today, but did direct us to do public outreach, we would lay out a public outreach plan like we've done in the past on controversial items. That would clearly include our downtown gaming partners and, quite frankly, probably other gaming institutions throughout the city and possibly the region. If you directed us to go forward with negotiations and conduct stakeholder outreach, we would do that. So I didn't feel like until we got direction to reevaluate the current policy that we should be holding meetings about what might be without your direction, frankly.
Thank you very much. So I mean, it was of great concern to me that you found out the way you found out.
We talked to one of the major downtown stakeholders last night, and we found out that they learned about it late Friday night as well. And then someone else read it in an agenda. So, I mean, we're in meetings with the city. Mike's at the city, this building, all the time. We're communicating with you guys all the time. I mean, we would just expect that there would be some communication on those lines.
Okay, well, I mean, it's a point well taken. I mean, to me, downtown, we're all in this together, and what we're trying to do is rebuild and enhance our entire community, and so the communication lines. However, were this not to go forward, there would have been no point, and it's not at a point of rubber stamping something because we don't even know if it's possible at this point. So just to assure you, but I really do feel your words and comments of anybody else who wants to make on this particular issue. We do see that as a terribly blighted area. We certainly understand and know and appreciate when Mr. Vampa is done with Allure and plans for the future, and that's what we're about, is fixing the hole. But we're in a whole new area now. And so I'm just sorry that you were blindsided and didn't get the information. But if, in fact, that's what we normally do, we followed the process. And you're here this morning, hopefully, and I will invite you back as we go forward with any discussion. Just please let me know. And we have a cot set aside for Mike when he's here all the time.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, please.
my understanding is you have a downtown association which meets regularly. So couldn't we have a policy or at least an understanding that if anything appears that it's going to affect downtown businesses, that at least would be mentioned that it's occurring? That's what I would suggest. Very good point. Do you understand what I'm saying about? So then you would know because you go to those meetings, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Or a representative does.
Or a representative, but then if we could have a standard procedure that if there is going to be something on the agenda that's going to involve significantly downtown, that it be mentioned at the Downtown Association meeting so it could go to all the people downtown.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Beers, please.
Thanks, Your Honor. I was, of course, amongst other objections, have deep philosophical problems with the proposal, but having heard rumors it was coming up, I scoured our agenda, the city council agenda, 3 times and couldn't find it. And suddenly it dawned on me for the first time, I think, in my 3.5 years on the council, we have an agenda item on the RDA agenda that's not on the city council agenda. And I think that's what threw people off a lot on the notice and getting the word out on this. It's an unusual circumstance.
I think you're absolutely correct on that, Ms. Farwell.
I would just add that when there's actually a proposal, this one's aside for a moment because this is a little unique because it's a policy discussion about whether to have a policy discussion or change the policy. We have an obligation to have a 10-day notification under state law for projects. So 10-day. So in addition to our normal 3 business day notification, should you direct us to go forward and negotiate an agreement, we would have a 10-day obligation. I'll stand corrected if Bill says it's more, but it's at least 10 days that we must notify. And oftentimes we have to take it to your redevelopment advisory council as well. So there's a lot of lead-in when there's a project and a financial decision being made. This one's a little unique, Councilwoman, regarding the policy. And I'll work on that with you.
Well, and again, too, going forward, anything that's a first time anything, which this is, at least to our knowledge for the past umpteen years. That certainly maybe some different type of notification so everybody in the city would be aware that at least it's at the RDA level, hasn't made it to the agenda level of the council, but at least it's on the table there. So perhaps that's something to think about and put on, if you can.
Mayor and Councilman Beers, to your question, Betsy's essentially correct. The law actually reads 14 calendar days, but that's effectively similar to 10 business days. And we'll definitely take the councilwoman's recommendation under heart. We do have the Downtown Las Vegas Alliance where we do communicate with downtown stakeholders. Maybe the tricky thing is it's hard to know, do we blast everything out or just select items? But we can certainly reach out to the stakeholders and see what their preference is. We did post this item to our redevelopment agency website 14 days prior to the meeting, and so that we had that communication as well.
Well, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
The thing is that from proposals, policy comes, and they should be notified at the proposal level so that they can give their input. I think that's very important. And even though the law reads such and such, practicality tells us that when you're involved in busy businesses, that we should take that extra step to inform them through another avenue, which we could do that way.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? I see Mr. Epstein crowding you, so I think he wants to. No?
I just wanted to reference maybe a question, maybe this is for Bill Arndt, but just as far as the projections for the project, because we haven't seen any numbers, but we understand with our conversation last night that, in our opinion and our experience, that the revenue numbers seem very, very optimistic and probably, bordering on non-realistic. But we also heard today about 3,600 jobs, and, for a 200-room hotel, we operate a 364-room hotel, and, we operate that with 550 employees. So we talk about jobs and the culinary and the impact. I just want to sort of put this, how do we look at these projections and these pro formas?
Thank you. Again, for the record, Bill Arndt. The project information checklist submitted by the project sponsor, they indicated that they did do an economic impact report, and that was part of their EB5 financing process. And they had an economist determine that the project would create nearly 3,000 direct, indirect, and induced jobs. Again, I'd refer to Senator Bryan or Mr. Fonfa for details on that. We're kind of seeing this in real time. We're having this policy discussion in real time, and I just state to not just to the agency board, but the listening public that I think this is one of the benefits of having our Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency operate the way it does. We have these discussions out in the open, not behind closed doors. And so we are having this discussion, but that is the information that's been presented by the project sponsor. We haven't really had a chance to dig into that too much, but that was the information that was provided.
Thank you, Mr. Arndt. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Mayor and the City Council. Mike Nolan, also from the Cortez. I'll be very brief. I'm in large support of the Redevelopment Agency, and I just see that this could hamper our advancement in that area when we get the casinos involved. At the same time the Echelon and Fontainebleau ran into trouble, we also ran into trouble with the Cabana Suites, an $8 million project. Started as 3, carried on to 8. We had to find financing from every avenue we could to continue and to get those rooms open downtown. And there was no support. We didn't go asking for assistance. We struggled through it. We raised the money. We had a project. We could have stopped the project. We decided in the city to go on with the project on our own. And if there is money given to the casinos, we want to get in line, as do many of the properties that have struggled and have things that can create new venues. And not without, don't want to speak for other property owners, but we want to be in line. I agree with Virginia Valentine in saying I think an issue like this could harm our redevelopment agency in the future. And that would be my only concern. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item, please come forward. Okay, yes, please. And your response, anything that you would care to add?
Your Honor, as Henry VIII said to his third wife, I shall not keep you long. If I may just have a moment or two to say. Anyway, all we're asking for is an opportunity. I certainly respect my clients, what our friends at the El Cortez. We're talking about a discussion. I do not see what the great danger or the apprehension is just to have a discussion on the policy. The fact that it's been in existence since time immemorial does not mean that it's not inappropriate at this time to decide, look, do we want to change the policy? Are there considerations, not to repeat myself, but criteria in terms of how much of the additional tax base, how many employees, all that sort of thing. All we're asking for is the opportunity. Now, with respect to what our friends from the El Cortez said, that they think our numbers are optimistic, with all due respect, they can't have it both ways. They can't say, gee, we got blindsided, just saw it yesterday, and then come forward with the pronouncement that we know these numbers can't work. If we had the opportunity for discussion, all of this would be open. I don't think Ms. Fretwell in any way did anything to try to conceal this from, the other gaming operators. She posted this in accordance with the open meeting law. We have an opportunity, if you allow us to continue this discussion, to address the very concern. We just found out about it. Shouldn't others know? I agree with that. That makes a lot of sense. And the vehicle to allow us to do that is to simply say, direct the staff to study this, come back with a report, make sure, as Ms. Fretwell indicated, that there could be a special direction to her to reach out to particularly targeted elements of the community so that everybody would have a chance to participate in the dialogue. And finally, let me say that if we have this opportunity, it may be possible in calculating the TIF funding that we would like to exclude the gaming areas of the property. That is the garage, the other amenities that are provided, the restaurants. Give us that opportunity. That's all we're asking. And then something is presented and all of the policy issues can be debated, and the council obviously has the final word. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to address members of the council.
Senator, timeline here. Were that to happen, and I'm going to ask Mr. Moody to come back up, please, if he's still here, because I can't see. Mr. Moody from the El Cortez. Woody, sorry. Joe Woody to come back up. A timeline. At what point is it too late for everything for your team?
Well, the lawyers in the room would tell you that time is of the essence, but I do think that give us some time. Could you give me just a moment, Your Honor, because
Sure.
It's a fair question, but I don't want to speak for my clients without at least...
Fine. I'm going to ask Mr. Woody a question at the same time, and assuming anybody else could come up. My question to you is, in a discussion at the request that we've just heard to discuss this, do you see an issue, a problem? I mean, it still could go nowhere. It still could come up with new concepts to help them come forward. Are you concerned that any discussion going forward is totally detrimental?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, that is correct. I mean, I think the show that we have presented today, or all of us coming from work today, is just that. We want to, just end this thing now. We think it harms the redevelopment for the future. We just don't see any advantage of advancing this at all. So that would be our position, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Woody. Senator.
Your Honor, I've been speaking on it. Hopefully, if we can if there's approval by the council today to send this to staff, maybe by the end of the year. I mean, at least that gives us an opportunity to say that we are still alive in the sense that the policy question has not been foreclosed. You have the option to do so. The other thing that I want to mention, and I don't know whether I emphasize this or not, that we may be, if given the time, we may be able to exclude that casino area as part of the calculation for the TIF funding. Again, another reason I respectfully suggest, give us time, give us the opportunity. We're not asking you to make a decision today as to whether you ought to change the policy. Just give us that opportunity. Like our friends from the El Cortez, longtime residents, good people all, Mr. Fonfa, Mr. Weiner, this is not their first rodeo. They've been in this community for a long time. Give these legitimate businessmen an opportunity to at least present the alternatives. And I thank you so much, Your Honor.
Thank you. And could I ask staff, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to do it, but I'm the mayor, so I can ask. Is there a recommendation for staff, having been involved in these discussions, as to your assessment at this time?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, for the record, Bill Arndt. We brought this item before you really to get direction from you and the agency board, so we do not have a recommendation at this time. Really, it comes down to, do you want additional information to make a decision on a policy or not? If you feel like you have enough information based on what you heard today, then we can get that direction and make a decision now. If you feel like you need additional information, we can do that, but realize if we do take time to study this as a policy issue, you have to be prepared to see that to its end and weigh in on all the information that's obtained. So we're really seeking agency direction at this time.
And have you at this point, I know you spent a great deal of time on it and conversation, have you, through our city manager, looked at other avenues to be of assistance that wouldn't involve TIF? I mean, I'm sure you're just not looking. You've looked at other avenues, or have you not, that would help them in their project?
Bill can weigh in a little bit on this, but we have looked at a couple of different sources that would not include TIF. Things like lead abatements that are available for hotel gaming properties statewide. That was legislatively directed well over a decade ago. In addition, we've looked at some of the public works requirements to see if some of those things.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood that.
Public works requirements.
Public works.
To see if there's some things that might be built into other city projects that could be handled by the city versus the developer. At this point, neither of those seem to be viable options. So, we have looked at that. Depending on what council directs us to do, if you were to direct us to go forward and negotiate an agreement, we'd continue to look at, other solutions. But at this point, what the project proponents have asked for is tax increment financing.
And at this point, if I may take that further through you, either of you, does it make the mark, if it were to go forward at some point, would it make the mark to the amount of $25 million?
Again, for the record, Bill Arndt, I don't believe that based on the project value, there's any way we could get to that amount. A loose rule of thumb is new property taxes, annual tax liability for a project is 1% of project value or less, and we don't get all the taxes in. A portion still goes to education and other uses. I gave the earlier estimate. I'm not sure that I was real clear in my answer to the councilwoman's question, but we do estimate that the annual tax liability will be in the ballpark of $500,000. We get a portion of that in, so if we would basically be discussing what portion the agency should keep versus what portion we could rebate back to the developer through a TIF agreement. I think the project sponsor did state accurately, it's not cash, it's future taxes paid, so they like on our other TIF financing arrangements for our other projects that we've done, they get a promissory note saying we're going to share back taxes that they actually pay. What they do with that promissory note is up to them, so it's not cash. But to answer the question directly, I don't see if there's any way, based on the project value, that we could get even close to that dollar amount. So it would be up to the project sponsor to look at private financing or other solutions coupled with TIF, even if we did assist with TIF.
No, we're dealing with words often, such as incidental. What does close to mean?
I believe that if we did a 50-50 split on a TIF agreement, I don't believe that we could get north of $5 million approximately.
Wow. Okay, thank you very much. Questions, comments?
I had another question, and that is, it seems to me that if you want to change policy, there's nothing wrong, and it's a good learning experience for all of us to discuss this. And even though I want very much for Lucky Dragon to succeed, and I know that they've in the past done everything they can to help that area, nonetheless, I think that by attaching the Lucky Dragon to the discussion, you're putting us in a situation where it might cause us problems later on in the legislature. And I say this from legislators with whom I've spoken recently. But there isn't anything, if you want to change policy, we can continue discussion, just not attach it, but allow Lucky Dragon to come, allow all the others to come so that they can say what they feel about it. But really, it almost seems a little backwards here. We don't have a policy for it, but we have a project connected with it. If we would have to change policy first, wouldn't we?
I think that's correct. Again, for the record, Bill Arndt. What I would say is circumstances and situations are usually what causes an organization like the city to look at our policy, examine our current policy, and see if it still fits our business community or not. So that's really what's happening, that we have a set of circumstances with a specific project where they're asking us to take a look at changing our past practice. So it's really the situation that's driving us to take a look and bring this issue to you as our agency board.
But then it would be a discussion by all and not just hinging on one property. That's what I'm talking about.
I believe if we're going to change our past practice substantially, then we should engage all of our partners. So I would agree with that, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I mean, to me, it was quite remarkable to understand the needs $25 million out of this. I'd like a response on that. If you must continue in discussion, if in fact the best the city could do were that policy changed, promoted, and gone through all the processing, if the best through your analysis is $5 million, how does that work at all?
If we indicated it hard and fast that it had to be 25 million or nothing, Mayor, members of the council, I apologize. That was not our intent. That's the gap. I mean, 5 million, 10 million, whatever those numbers, help us in terms of getting the additional financing we need. So whatever your decision here, with great respect, should not be whether or not you agree with Mr. Arndt that it wouldn't generate the 25 million or it may generate 5 million. We want an opportunity to see if we can work with the city and make those numbers work so that we can get the additional financing we need to complete the project.
Thank you very
so
much.
I apologize if 25 million appeared to be a take it or leave it proposition. That was not our intent.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, Councilman Beers?
Thanks, Your Honor. A lot of our discussion here has been focused on the potential change from our longstanding policy to not do TIF with gaming properties. There's a second policy here that we're brushing up against that to me seems even more significant, in fact seems insurmountable, and that is that gaming or retail or entertainment, we have never done anything like this with a project that's already underway. And redevelopment participation brings with it to the project ropes and ropes and ropes of strings attached. And I don't understand, frankly, how it's possible to retroactively comply with all those strings attached. For example, we require on a TIF participating project the payment of prevailing wage to all workers who work on the construction. And while this is a union project, since the recession, the prevailing wage, which is an official statistic maintained by the state government, has drifted up well above the reality price that the unions are setting. Work has been scarce, so the unions have come down from prevailing wage, still a good wage, but not prevailing wage. So the fact that the property has been constructed with union labor thus far doesn't really give us any assurance that it's possible to comply retroactively with the prevailing wage law. So as we contemplate changes in policy, it's not just the concept of investing in gaming. I grew up here, so to me gaming is like, you know, the sales of Diet Coke at the grocery store. But the prevailing wage component and all the other strings that are attached to a redevelopment participating project, I don't know how you would possibly comply with the project already this far out of the ground.
Councilman Anthony, please.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, we've had some pretty good discussion today. This really comes down to, we're talking about two issues here. We're talking about the agenda item, which basically says that the Lucky Dragon is asking for tax increment financing. That's what the agenda item says. And then we're having another discussion about how we handle TIF financing in the future. So if we want to have a conversation about changing our policy, we can do that. That's for another day. That's another agenda item. We may never do that. I don't know. But that's really something down the road. But for me, today the focus is on whether we should approve tax increment financing or move forward with doing that with the Lucky Dragon. And, you know, you're all good folks down there. Everybody's been wanting you to succeed on this project. We've been talking about it for a while. You're right, that is a pretty tough area, and that project would help, would probably help to develop that area a little bit more. But I mean, this tax increment financing for this project is a problem. I mean, we've never done it for a hotel casino. We have the industry here telling us, you know, it's an unlevel playing field if you start picking and choosing which casinos you're going to put tax money into and which you're not going to put tax money into. That becomes a big, you know, I don't know how we do that. Who do we give tax increment financing to and who do we don't? And they're going to, you know, the gaming industry, if I owned a casino, I'd be lining up for tax dollars, but they don't want that to happen. They want the industry to rise and fall on their own, you know, on their own merits, and that's really the way it should be. And, you know, Councilman Beers brings up the problem about tax increment financing right in the middle of a project. I mean, you could have all kinds of projects in the redevelopment area that just say, well, we're going to put as much money as we can to it, and then halfway through we'll go and get some tax dollars to kind of finish it. This one for me is there's too many questions, there's too many problems. I can't support tax increment financing for this particular project. It doesn't work for me. I don't think the residents that I represent want their tax dollars going towards a hotel casino. I mean, that's a whole big deal. Again, if we want to talk about this in the future and have meetings, I don't know. But I can't support this particular project the way it's set up today.
Your Honor.
If I may, Councilman, Mayor Pro Tem was in line, then you, if it comes back to you, okay? Please.
Thank you, Mayor. I've given this a great deal of thought. Mr. Fonfa, everything you've said and presented to this council is absolutely correct. I've never said no to a job, to good jobs. And I see a lot of jobs coming. I see the cleanup of the blight in that area. I see it all. You and I have had this conversation for quite a long time now in regards to how do we get you there where you need to be. I'm also concerned, and I absolutely agree with Ms. Valentine's comments about the legislature. This is a very dangerous place that we're in today, having this conversation. And it's because of the legislature, because this seems to always be that football that gets kicked around at the legislature when it's time to get back at the city for something. And I'm concerned about that. I'm greatly concerned about that. I have to, in my mind, weigh the value here, and I want you to succeed. I want you to get this thing built, and I want you to create those 3,000, 3,600 jobs. I want you to clean up that area. And when the time comes for Chinatown in that area, Mr. Fonfa, I expect to see you here talking about TIF financing, because that's something that fits into our policies. I'm just concerned about heading in this direction. There's got to be another way, and I'll side with the Epstein family in regards to this. They struggled. I remember when that tower was being built downtown, they were struggling at the same time. I remember that clearly. And you guys did it. I think, Mr. Fonta, the Allure project had some ULICO funding behind it. I can't remember exactly, but I think there was some Union Trust funds behind it. And you don't have to answer this question because it's kind of rhetoric for me, but I'm sure you're looking at all avenues, Union Trust funds, other partners in the venture. I mean, trying to reach out there and close that gap for the benefit of your bank. I'm going to be hard-pressed to support moving in this direction using TIF financing because of that. This philosophical change is difficult for me to wrap my arms around because of the dangerous place it puts us in for the future legislative session. That concerns me a great deal for the survival of our redevelopment agency. All of these are great points that we can certainly talk about all day long. But just, Ms. Fretwell, having a discussion concerns me, especially as we're working with the Southern Nevada Forum right now, as close as we are with them and the Chamber of Commerce and all of those other tentacles that are out there that are affecting city policy or state policy for that matter. It's a great concern of mine. So I'm not sure I can move forward with this, and I apologize to you guys. You guys are the best of the best, and I want to see you succeed. So much so I'll throw my tools on and come help you if I have to. That's how much I want you to be successful out there. But I'm not sure this is the right direction to go. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm still.
Councilman Coffin?
Thank you. Is a motion appropriate at this point? I do want to ask a question, though, of staff. Okay, good. Before I introduce a motion for approval, I do want to ask Bill a question. Bill, you're more familiar with the act, the organic act of creating the redevelopment agency, and the strictures, the permissions, the prohibitions, sort of placed in the Organic Act, passed, I guess, in '85, maybe. Do you recall, or do you know, from your looking at the document constantly, if there's a prohibition in that document against anybody applying for any kind of assistance from a local government?
Thank you, Councilman, for the question. Again, for the record, Bill Arndt. I'm not aware of any restriction, either one, in statute when the legislature authorized redevelopment agencies, any restriction on a specific industry, or two, in our redevelopment plan. I'm not aware of any restriction either. Really what it comes down to is past practice. We haven't done this for the past 20 years.
Thank you, Bill.
And so that's
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. I now move for approval of item number 5. Okay. So I'd like to speak on the motion.
I would like to speak on the motion, Mayor.
Yes,
I'm
please.
sure there's plenty of time for
All right, there's
discussion
been a
on this.
motion on
Now-
agenda item, pardon? No? Yes.
Oh, yes, I do, and I'm sure
motion,
we'll
by
want to speak on
Councilman
the
Coffin
motion. But I just
to
thought we should
approve
get it,
on 5.
like the fire under the motion, so we can get that, because some of the previous discussions have already been as if they were speaking to the motion. So let's
Okay.
have it, let's have this discussion
We,
now.
this side of the table is a wind tunnel here. They didn't hear your motion. Could you repeat?
The motion is to approve the action, which is essentially to study further action.
Thank you very much.
That is the motion,
And we
which
will-
is the one that was published
Thank you very much.
on the internet.
Okay, so
10 days ago.
they're hearing it.
Okay.
They're hearing it.
And talked about around town a hell of a lot, actually. Okay, so.
Okay.
Okay, I needed to have that last bit of information from Bill Arndt. Thank you, Bill. I mean, we'll probably be calling on you to answer questions as we go along, but I'm done with you in terms of that.
Thank you.
For this moment. But what you hit at there, his answer hit to the heart of the question, and that is that the legislature, I'm sorry, I've got to have the committee's attention. I want to make sure we are all together on this.
Councilwoman?
I do, yeah, because I can't speak if I got this in my ear. I have this hearing problem.
Okay, please go ahead.
What I have in mind here is, looking back 30 years ago, as a legislator, I voted for the act allowing the city of Las Vegas to have a redevelopment agency. A certain blonde-haired, had more hair at the time, gentleman sitting in the governor's chair by the name of Richard Bryan signed the bill. And if you think for 1 minute during that session, we could have passed that bill if we had said, to our major industry, to the representatives of the kingmakers in this state, that you can't participate in the future in anything that we do in redevelopment. You can't have an action. You can't even have a shot. You can't even study that idea of maybe taking advantage of the tax laws that are in existence. Then you think we would have been able to finish passing that bill if we'd have prohibited the casinos or the hotels without casinos or in any part of a fragment of a casino? No. No. It was never the intention of the legislature in creating the Organic Act, which we are discussing its corollary being our ordinance, that we not consider our own major industry as someday needing some assistance, as someday looking at change. Now, gambling is a very conservative industry. It is the most conservative industry, I think, probably in the world. It hates change. It really does. If it's unpredictable, if you can't book it, if you can't make an odd on it correctly, it's bad business. It just is bad business because you don't know the outcome in advance. In our business, we know the outcome. We know that ultimately the house wins. And it wins because it plays by the rules. So the rules here that we are confronted with allow us to change the rules, but not to stack the deck against somebody else, to not to count the cards and say, you can't look, but I've got a number here that I'd love you to hand to me, and I know it's in that deck right there, and you better give it to me now. No. This is just to open the discussion on how we might consider embracing the possibility that our own major industry may get some help in the future in this way. Now, there are people in this audience who have testified, and there are people who are looking on, who have benefited from tax dollars enormously. And I know the general public could give a fig about whether or not we're talking redevelopment dollars or TIF. It's all Greek alphabet stuff. But it's tax dollars in the end. But these are tax dollars that would be created by these investors if they're allowed to finish their project, in much greater volume than if the concrete and steel sits like a lump at the entrance to the city. So I think it's worthy of discussion. And today is the day where we decide if we're going to talk. This is not the day where you say to the gentleman and lady who have testified so far today that your word is final, that we won't study this, that we will just go ahead and take your word for it that it's bad. But that's not how we passed this law. It's not how the city passed the ordinance, and it's not how we've been running it since it passed. We've done our very best to help our major industry. And woe is the city, woe to Detroit and Akron and other cities, particularly in the east, that said, tough luck to their major industry. You know, we won't give you any assistance. They left. They went somewhere else. And they let their cities fall apart. We are not that kind of council.
Thank you.
We don't seek permission to discuss an idea. We do not ask for or give somebody specific notice out of the ordinary if it's all right to discuss an issue. We don't do that. It's eminently fair to every player here involved that they have a mission, and that is to kill this idea before it's born. But I don't know if I can single out any individual group here, but I can tell you the Cortez people have invested enormously downtown of their own cash. That goes way back. That's a policy of all a succession of the owners of the Cortez. And other downtown casinos have invested to considerable, but the farther you get away from the boulevard, it gets tougher. The point is that I don't see the mega giants of the NRA investing downtown. I don't see the mega giant casinos, the oligopoly that exists now on the Strip, investing in our blighted areas, in our city limits of Las Vegas. The city limits in that specific area in my ward and previously in Councilwoman Tarkanian's ward, that is a dangerous place to go, but where people live and where people hang on by their fingernails, and where a couple of churches do their very best to do what the city cannot do. Council members, think about it. How many people have attempted to invest casino dollars on Sahara right there. Not one. I'll answer it. Not one of them had, no, maybe they considered it and rejected it, but they sure as hell haven't put any money into it, except the petitioners today who want us to consider the idea of allowing them to participate in something that is legally allowed by our statutes. It's certainly not verboten. It would be horrible for us to say to certain people, yeah, you do have a veto power over our considerations. And God bless them, because I've been there helping them for how many years I've served in public life. And I hate to see this attitude where you can't discuss an idea, or you can't take it any further, or somebody's going to get an edge. Hell, I grew up with the fathers, I grew up with the sons and daughters of the guys who made this modern gaming town. I played golf with the fathers and mothers, too. So I know the action that's at stake here. But damn it, it is not the time to be overly restrictive. This is a time to explore new ideas.
Thank you.
We are right on the tipping point. And so that's why I urge your support of this measure, colleagues, you know, to move forward to study the program and see what we can do, if we can do anything. That's all.
Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Coffin. Councilman Barlow, please.
Thank you. Mr. Arndt, in relation to the employment plan and the nexus with TIF, can you explain that, please?
Certainly. Our redevelopment agency by statute requires us to do certain things whenever we assist a project. One of the requirements is an employment plan, where we ask the project sponsor prior to the start of a project come up with an employment plan on how they're going to engage diverse constituent groups, racial minorities, women, disabled veterans, as well as local residents in both the construction phase of the project as well as the permanent operations of the project. That's a statutory requirement. We also have a policy as part of our redevelopment agency. The other major requirement, and there are additional ones as well, but it was referenced earlier, whenever we spend over a certain dollar amount on a project, and this would apply, state prevailing wage rates as determined by the Nevada Labor Commissioner are required to be paid on all construction. And again, that determination is typically made prior to the start of the construction of the project.
So if we were to move forward, would we be in compliance with the employment plan?
That's an interesting question. We haven't really kind of faced this dilemma in the past. I think we'd have to sit down with our city attorney's office and see how we comply. But we don't have the option of not complying. It is a requirement. In my mind, and I'll defer to City Attorney Jerbick, but we'd probably have to seek some guidance from the Nevada Labor Commissioner with respect to the prevailing wages, and it also presents a dilemma for the employment plan as well.
Right. Mr. Jerbick, I'm not sure if you heard my question, but in relation to the employment plan that's established by this council for many years now, specifically as developers or applicants come before us inquiring in regards to the TIF financing, how would the employment plan be implemented, if at all, if in fact we were to move forward today?
Councilman Barlow, may I weigh in a moment? I just asked Scott Adams to go back and actually read the statute. So he may want to tag on to whatever Brad says. I just wanted to weigh in quickly on that.
Okay, I'll be glad to hear from you, Mr.
Yeah, I was, I just spent a little bit of time reviewing the statute as we were discussing, and there are some provisions in the statute relative to employment plan that are a little bit concerning, and I don't know how you meet it retroactively, because you have to the developer has to certify, has to provide a report relating to redevelopment of the project that indicates, and I'll quote right from the statute, outreach efforts that the developer is utilizing, including without limitation information related to job fairs, advertisements, and publications that reach residents of the area described in the statute, and utilization of employment referral agencies. In other words, they have to go through an extensive effort to prove that they employed in the project residents from the area. And I guess I would refer to Brad on this. I don't know how you do that retroactively. I mean, if you didn't do it, you couldn't say after the fact that you did it when you were supposed to.
Mr. Jerbick, please.
I agree with that. I think that when it comes to employment plans, you look at everything from construction to the ultimate permanent jobs that go with the project. And in this case, because there has been construction and no employment plan preceded that, there's no way to measure that and have compliance with state law.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I have a question further.
Please.
If I may ask, Bill, thank you very
Yes,
much.
please.
And maybe the three gentlemen who just answered this question from Councilman Barlow can help. Were you quoting essentially the rules as it pertains to redevelopment dollars in general? Or were you talking about funds were you talking about funds from all sources that we might grant out or, allow?
I'm quoting, and actually I could refer you to from NRS 279.6098, and it's a section of the statute that's titled "Report by Developer of Information Relating to Redevelopment Project," and then there's a penalty for failure to submit that report, and it discusses the reporting requirements of a developer that receives incentives from a redevelopment agency.
Okay, so that doesn't address tax increment financing. It doesn't address QSP or VIP. It doesn't address specifically any of the dollars that we dole out, essentially, or match from redevelopment. So when we give out, and we don't give, we match RDA dollars to businesses that are willing to match for beautification under the VIP program, or QSP under the additional need of money, perhaps to meet code requirements. We don't retroactively look and see if they had paid, when that building was built 50 years before or 30 years before, if they had in fact paid prevailing wage on that little business or had employed union labor. I mean, goodness sakes, they probably did, but who didn't? So it's hard to tell, isn't it? Basically, that's a stricture on RDA money in general, without saying, yeah, in certain cases, if somebody applies for this kind of grant or match or TIF, you can, and you got to do this. But no, if we give it to Blanca's Beauty Shop and we give them $10,000 because they're spending $20 to beautify the place, we're not prohibited from doing that, are we? We don't need that documentation in advance of construction.
Okay, thank you. All right, has that, do you have your answer, Councilman Barlow?
I have my answer, Mayor, and I hear what Councilman Coffin is speaking to. However, there's a major difference between the employment plan, Councilman Coffin, and the visual improvement program and the Quick Start program as it relates. You'll get an answer to your question, but I'm just trying to clarify to make sure that what you're bringing forward is totally separate, because the employment plan, it has an NRS attachment to it, unlike the visual improvement or the Quick Start program. And so as staff prepares to answer your question, I just want to make sure that there's a clear delineation between the employment plan and how that operates, specifically impacting communities such as the area in which this development is looking to go into. And so having been a part of this council for such a long time and understanding how the employment plan works, I just wanted to make sure that the question that I had in relation to whether or not the employment plan would actually line up if in fact we were to move forward with this development or not. And so the answer came back in relation to answering my question. So
I think you got an answer, and I think, and I appreciate, Councilman, you're trying to help on this, and I think we're finally, there's a caucus going on down here amongst lawyers and managers to find an answer. And of course, while they're thinking about this, I have to say it begs the question, if in fact there were some stricture of some kind about that, why would the applicants have even been given the application to fill out, or the promise or the possibility of coming to the council? First, of course, to the redevelopment agency, if it wasn't understood that it was allowed without all of the other pre-qualifiers.
Okay, I think there's a motion and a motion to approve. Pardon?
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
I want to make a comment on the motion. You said that you moved to approve the item 5 that we have here. Is that what you said? That's your motion? All right. Item 5 says, report from redevelopment agency staff, which we had, that's not part of your motion probably, and discussion for possible action regarding a tax increment financing request from Lucky Dragon. So I don't know what your possible action is specifically. And that's why I'm asking what is this motion, because if it's this, I don't see really a motion. Anything specific.
And that's why it wasn't posted on the council agenda, because it was not an item of a budgetary concern that would have required final approval of the council. It was an action to require staff to study whether or not this is feasible, whether this works, whether all the whethers and whatevers and whyevers. That
Okay, if this is feasible for the Lucky Dragon.
I'm moving for approval of the action of the item exactly as it's posted.
Okay.
To continue discussion on this particular item.
Okay, and then I would have to say that we're putting the cart before the horse because we don't have the policy change yet. We are not doing policy, we're doing an item for one casino, and that was my concern. Even though I hope the casino gets what it wants, you can't go around making policy based on one item.
Okay, I'm
That's all.
calling the question now. Please cast your vote
Do
on
we
this
have an
item.
understanding, Your Honor? I realize that there's some confusion here, I think. We are telling staff to devote time to study it for us so that we can determine. That's what that's about.
Thank you very much, and I've called for the question, and so Councilman Barlow,
Your
there
Honor,
we
could
are.
we
And please
withdraw?
post.
We might be able to save a little angst here. We would withdraw our application at this time and have these discussions without benefit of the council's action today, if that's agreeable at this point.
I think it is posted up there. It is posted.
Yep.
It did post. And it was, I think the issue is we all want you to succeed. I've texted you a suggestion too. So certainly, Mr. Woody, please.
Mayor and members of the council and to the group of Lucky Dragon, I just want to make it very clear that the El Cortez supports their success. We certainly, want to see development. We support all the development, all the support you guys give everybody downtown. It's just this particular issue is just central to the heart of what we do, and that we have to fight for our dollars. And I can tell you, if this were to go to the next stage, we have projects on the shelves too. We want to be second in line, okay? And we'll get those applications prepared if that's the situation. So thank you very much, and good luck.
We
to
appreciate
Lucky
everybody
Dragon
coming
folks.
down and taking time from their days to address this item. We certainly want to, okay, Councilman?
I just want to say this, Mayor, and with your permission, of course, to Mr. Fonfa and his team. This may be the catalyst that helps you get you to where you need to be. There has to be other opportunities out there that you just haven't tapped into yet. And this may be that awakening of the industry that may jump in and help you guys get you to where you need to go. I want you to know I've directed staff even to look at other ways other than this way to get you over the finish line, to show the city had some skin in the game for your bank's benefit. Got it. We just couldn't find that mechanism. So I want you to understand that this may be that catalyst that someone says, hey, I think I want to be part of your team, and maybe they'll be knocking on your door pretty quick. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. So we hope going forward that you will continue to have conversations with us and let us know, because that was something on our agenda from your first approach of our office, to come and see where there was an avenue open to help you succeed and finish your project. And so I know this is disappointing, but there will be other avenues open. So we hope that we are part of that solution, and we'll continue to look at ways that we can give you some input that might help you proceed further. But we wish you the best. You've done just great things. And I do recall the days of the cabanas. I mean, that was the spark plug that really began the redevelopment downtown, whatever year that was. So persevere, don't give up. This is one big family, and we're here. So we're here for you. We thank you for spending the time with us, and we are going to move on into our agenda item number 6, which is our citizen participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction.
Before the committee adjourns, I'd like to ask a question, Mayor, of legal counsel.
Could you wait till I finish reading this and then let me have this moment, please? If
All
you
right.
could. Thank
All
you.
right.
To continue, no subject may be acted upon by the redevelopment agency unless that subject is on the agenda and scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, please come to the podium and give your name for the record. The amount of discussion on any single subject, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed, may be limited. So I'm going to hold that now, and Councilman
Your Honor, what I'm
Coffin
asking for is legal
question
advice
for-
on the question before
Yes.
we go into public comment, so I'd like to have that privilege.
I've just said that we are going to have your question answered.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
So
you.
what I'm trying to find out here is procedurally, where do we move from here? Typically, when an applicant asks to withdraw, it is done without prejudice. However, because a vote was cast and announced abruptly, I might say, we now know where, I need to know where this project stands. So I'm asking really, has it been withdrawn with prejudice or without prejudice? Has it simply been defeated? Can it come back? What's the price of coming back? Let's try to get this out in the public.
I'm not
If
sure.
I might precede that, your response, you made a motion. You made the motion. We voted on the motion to continue the discussion. That motion failed and was posted, at which point the senator did come up and asked to withdraw or strike, whichever. So the issue is it failed, and that is what the vote was, which means what is the timeline?
That's my
that-
question of legal counsel.
There was no application before this body today, and so there's no prejudice. This was just a discussion as to whether or not to continue to have a discussion, and the answer to that was no. But if you had voted on an application, that might have been different. But there's no prejudice to the applicant here as a result of today's vote.
Thank you. So there's no prejudicial outcome. That's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving forward now, it's public comment time. Anybody wishing to be heard, please come forward. And hearing none, we'll move on to agenda number 7, and that is agency member recognition. Comments made by individual agency members during this portion of the agenda will not be acted upon by the agency unless that subject is on the agenda and scheduled for action. Is there any member of the redevelopment agency who wishes to speak under this portion of the agenda? Okay, are there any other comments? Hearing none, this redevelopment agency is adjourned, and it is 12 minutes after 10. I'm going to let the council take till 7 minutes more, which brings us back promptly at 10:20. You can do that in 7 minutes.